The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Don't adjust your screen. There is nothing wrong. You're about to enter a world where the very concept of time is rendered obsolete by the sheer power of entertainment. You're about to enter the Boggis Hour. Of the Boggis Hour, Greg Boggis!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Boggis Hour. This show, I interview a comic, pop culture enthusiast, and the host of his own TV guidance counselor podcast, the incredible Ken Reid. So here I am, a comedian, podcaster, pop culture maven. Ken Reid.
Sticking with me, that one.
Yeah. I know. Who would have known? There used to be a comedy club called Joke Maven. So,
really?
Yeah.
Where was that?
So it was up at it was after. So Dick Doherty had the Comedy Palace.
Yep.
The Grill 93, Dick Doherty's Comedy Club. I can't remember what it was actually called. And then it became the Comedy Palace. After the Comedy Palace dissolved, they moved about a quarter mile up on the same side of the road, and that was Joke Maven's.
Okay.
So I still have to find that sign.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah.
And so I actually looked it up today, and it's a connoisseur.
Yeah. People were like, "You've misspelled Haven," or "You've misspelled Heaven" if they went really far. Joke Heaven would be a good club. There's people do dead jokes that like no one does anymore.
Yeah, that would be rough to do like crowd work in heaven though.
That's true.
You can't really be mean, right?
I've been to Joke Hell many times.
We've all been to Joke Hell. So you're a stand-up comic, but you're also like a guy whose longer history is that of a follower, chronicler, collector of pop culture.
Yeah, sort of inadvertently. I never really set out to do that. But
So you're like a Yankee hoarder, first of all. You collect things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always did that as a kid. And, well, one of the things was I would always sort of discover things that nobody wanted that were very interesting to me. And I kind of came of age in a time when I would hit things right at the right spot where you were able to get stuff for free or almost nothing that was really great that people would then want later. Like I used to make my living as an 8 and 9-year-old buying and selling whole comic collections.
Oh, no kidding.
In like the mid to late 80s because that second post-Batman movie boom hadn't happened yet. And it was a lot of like, my kid went to college and left his comics here. I want him out of here. So,
you
know, I think the first one I went to a flea market with my dad and borrowed $20 for like 4 long boxes of comics, pulled out what I wanted, sold the rest for a profit, paid him back, had enough for another collection and like that kind of stuff. So, you know, it was comics and then it was surf records and stuff that kind of no one wanted. I was not ahead of curves. I was just way behind.
Way behind. What do you remember the first thing as a kid that you glommed onto, that you attached yourself to, that you really liked?
I always liked horror movies and comic books, and the first comic book I ever bought was New Defenders 142 in 1982.
Okay.
And I
guess I don't remember. Was that a Marvel?
It was a Marvel comic. It was the tail end of the Defenders, who were sort of like a spin-off team of the Avengers.
Okay.
And I bought it at Delaney's Superette in Melrose. And to this day, and it's not a valuable comic, like I see it in quarter bins, but to this day, whenever I see a copy of it, I'll just buy it. But that was the first one I bought. I was 2 years old. And I just always remembered liking it. And I always remembered liking horror movies. And so I would collect old posters, or the video store would have like promo items they were getting rid of, and I would always ask for them, that kind of stuff. Don't know why.
So you're coming of age in the slasher 80s?
Yeah, but I always liked older stuff too. But the great thing was that I came of age in the video store boom. So you had access to everything because people were just buying whatever, and cable had just come in, so there was just this huge need for content. So I was seeing, 60 years of movies and television on video and on cable because they were just trying to fill airtime with whatever they could get. And so I saw a lot of really cool stuff and stuff that sort of changed my life in a lot of ways because, like, I always cite Night Flight, which was a show on USA Network. And it was from about 1981 to 1987, and it was every single night from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., and they'd show anything, old educational shorts, they'd show punk rock documentaries, John Waters movies, music videos. It was like just this huge, weird mishmash of stuff, the Atomic Cafe or whatever. So it was just stuff that I would never have been exposed to otherwise. And it was
John
just
Waters
fun.
movies as a kid. That's
I
wonderful.
remember seeing a profile on Divine when I was about 6. And I'm like, this looks interesting.
Yeah, that must have been quite interesting. Yeah, that's one of the things that I kind of miss about the old video stores is that there were these, you actually had people that were fans of film that would work at the place. There's obviously some knuckleheads, but there was a bunch of people that liked movies, and so they would actually stock the shelves with stuff they liked, indie stuff, all these neat movies.
Recommend stuff for you.
They could give you what you're looking for, too.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the things that I always talk about on my podcast is that although we have access to everything we could ever want right now instantaneously, more or less, I think people spend less time with things. So there are movies and albums that people recommended to me that at first, or the first time I listened to it or watched it, I didn't get it. I didn't like it. But because it took me a while to find it and seek it out, I would listen to it again. And I'm like, maybe I missed something. Listen a little closer. And every single example of that ended up being one of the things that I absolutely love, like some of my favorite things. And I think now, where you don't have to work as hard to find these things, you go, don't like it, next thing. And so you don't work as hard to get the reward of something that kind of like Blue Velvet or something, Right.
Well, I think that's one of the things that is very interesting is that the vast amount of stuff that's available now, it does almost, it sometimes devalues things because you're like, there's plenty more. You don't give it that time to steep, and we've also been conditioned more recently to want the pop up front as opposed to just watching an old horror movie, and a lot of times it'd be depends on the style, but a lot of times it'd just be very, very few bangs, and at the end there'd be a couple of real good twists or scares.
Yeah, people want things move faster. I mean, part of that too is MTV, and when you watch the way a show sort of pre-'84, pre-Miami Vice was, even an action show, it's so much slower paced. And I think for younger people, it's almost like watching a black and white movie. They're instantly turned off by it because the presentation's a lot different. But we got exposed to, decades and decades of stuff. I mean, we're watching Little Rascals shorts from the 20s and 30s and the 80s. And, now a kid wouldn't probably watch anything from even the 70s.
Yeah, it is so funny to see a lot of the things that, I remember, what was it, March of the Wooden Soldiers with Laurel and Hardy. And it's just, the production is horrible. And it's just, you just tell how bad the costumes are, but it's just such a great movie. Yeah. And it's a really entertaining thing to watch. And and to me, part of that is it's as unmagical as seeing, a lot of, that's, watching a movie and seeing all the computer graphics. Like, that's
weight.
Almost as much of a tell as, a crappy ape costume.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, did you ever see the movie The Howling 2?
I remember The Howling was a really great one.
The Howling is great, Joe Dante, but The Howling 2, Your Sister's a Werewolf, with Sybil Danning and Christopher Lee in it. But there's a funny story where they shot it in Romania and they shipped them werewolf costumes from Universal or Paramount sort of studio lot. And when they got them, they realized they were ape costumes. They were the ape costumes from the Planet of the Apes TV series. And they were like, what are we going to do? Like, we have to use these. And Christopher Lee, who was playing a werewolf expert, goes, I will come up with a line how in the transformation they go through a monkey phase. And he says it in the movie, like they go through a monkey phase. So these werewolves look like monkeys. It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, wow. Monkey phase.
So one of my favorite cheesy horror movies, and I like the Hammer ones, the Hammer horrors. This was American International. It was Dracula versus Frankenstein.
Oh yeah.
And I believe, does Dracula rip Frankenstein's arms off?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Watching that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it was about 12. Like, oh, this is horrifying.
Yeah. Oh yeah, all those AIP movies. Yeah. And we still had a lot of movie theaters and even drive-ins in the 80s and a lot of second run stuff. So you had all the opportunities to see all of this stuff.
Yeah. And I think I was Lon Chaney Jr. was in that too.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the live Tales of Tomorrow Frankenstein that he does in the 50s where he's hammered?
No.
So he's really drunk, and he thinks it's a rehearsal, and it's a live show. So he's playing Frankenstein, so there are scenes where he's supposed to like smash through a door, but he thinks it's the rehearsal. So he goes, oh, and then like goes up to the door and like gently opens it and walks through, and like supposed to smash a boulder and just kind of puts it down gently, which adds a whole new subtext to that. Like, oh, this Frankenstein's angry, but then he's also very careful. It's it's on. I mean, that's one of the great things. If you know what to look for, you can watch that on YouTube now.
Which is a great thing. It is amazing to have all of that content available to you now. Whatever you want to look up, you can find.
But you kind of have to know what you're looking for. That's the problem.
Yeah, because there's a lot. It's also how you type in and how you word things. Too.
Right. Like some kid's not going to be like drunk 50s actor live TV and then go, wow, I found this video I had never seen before.
Right. What was the one I remember seeing? We didn't get it on Betamax. There was a Betamax store. My buddy's dad had Betamax.
Superior format.
Yeah, but it lost out on the marketing, right?
Yep. Well, it was also a shorter, they only made 60-minute tapes when it first came out. And people were like, I want to watch a whole movie on one tape. So VHS was like, we can do it, even though we're not as good quality. And then they never bounced back.
Nice. And the movie was Blood-Sucking Freaks.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we didn't rent it. I think they rented, like Bimbo Bowls from Buffalo. Or
Yeah,
something.
that movie's disturbing. And that was a Troma pickup. Troma would reissue that every couple of years.
Really?
Yeah. It's on DVD with a Eli Roth commentary to Kevin
Gosh.
Fever.
Eli Roth is quite the
Connoisseur of those movies.
connoisseur
Yeah.
of really dark.
Yeah.
dark violent
Newton,
stuff.
Mass's own Eli Roth.
Oh, is that where he's from?
Yeah.
I did not know that. So you got a podcast?
I do. TV guidance counselor, along the lines of what we've been talking about. I own pretty much every issue of TV Guide, at least from like 1965 to the year 2000.
Wow.
And I used to pay for my own subscription as a kid. We didn't have a lot of money, but I would make sure I always had my TV Guide. And so the concept of the show is that someone comes over, they pick an old issue of TV Guide, they sit down and write down what they'd watched that week, and then they hand me the TV Guide, they have their list, and we talk about their choices.
Oh, wow.
That's basically the show.
No kidding.
And it kind of just came out of the fact that I had these in my house in a spinning rack in the corner of the room. And Sean Sullivan, very funny comedian, said, you should just do this as a podcast, because when people would come over, we'd be sitting around and people would flip through and go, oh, remember this show, whatever. And so that's why I started doing it. And it's been about 2 years, and it's really strange how I've been able to get like a ton of people who have been on those shows that I watched growing up on the show. And I can't believe the people who agree to do the show.
Wow. And they actually come in studio.
Yeah, a lot of them will come to my house. Whenever I go to LA, I'll ship out a huge box of TV guides, and I'll do some out there. I'll rent like an apartment and do it there. So yeah, it's very, very strange. Very strange.
They still make TV Guide, right?
They do. It's actually 3 different companies now, though.
Oh, really?
So TV Guide Magazine is a separate company. They're more like an Entertainment Weekly. They still have the grid like vestigially for some strange reason, because it's not. TV Guide used to be very localized. You could have many different editions.
Right.
It's just national now. There's TV Guide Channel, which is now Pop TV, and then there's TVGuide.com, which is also a separate company.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, it's very strange.
So, did you have any siblings?
I had a sister. Yeah.
She older or younger?
She was younger. Yeah, 3 years younger than me.
You think you were crazy?
Yeah, pretty much. We were very. It's interesting when I look back now, because I also got very into punk rock as a kid, and I was in a punk rock
were in a
band.
band, right?
Yeah, I was in a band in the '90s. 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. Named after a Perubu song. But I used to hang out at the Rat in Kenmore Square when I was like 12, 13, because I had a
knew
growth
Mitch
spurt.
way back then, did you?
Yeah. So and we started with bands like Dropkick Murphys, and which was really weird. And I dressed the same way. It was pretty much looked the same. But my sister got really like full on, neck tattoos, sleeves later. And in hindsight, I realized it's probably because she was, chasing the stuff I was into, which was very strange. But yeah, we were very, very different.
You ever remember a band called Cudgel?
I've heard the name before.
They're my buddies from Milford.
Okay.
They're in the
Yeah.
band, so that
New Hampshire band. We used to play at a place in Portsmouth all the time called the Elvis Room.
Oh yeah, that's not there anymore.
It's not.
It was like a coffee house.
Yeah, it was great because you could use your. I've never drank before, so I would get. You could get milkshakes with your drink tickets.
Right.
That was
right
very
downtown
exciting.
Portsmouth. I remember
Yep.
that. It was
Yeah,
a cool
it's right
little-
across from where the Friendly Toast is now.
Yeah, which is still there.
Yeah, and that's still
Well,
there.
they've redone it a little bit. It's a little bit
Yeah,
more
it's a little.
shinier.
Yeah, we used to play there with like bands like the Bruisers and the Queers. And
Oh,
bands like
nice.
that, yeah.
Wow. So do you still? Well, what was you? Did you sing?
I sang and I played a little bit of guitar, but sang is loose. It was a lot of screaming. I'm not a musical talent. Yeah, at all.
Which was one of the great things about punk rock was that it did allow a lot of people to express themselves
exactly
artistically and not necessarily artistic way.
We did surprisingly all right. Like we were teenagers and we were playing with the Mighty Mighty Bosstones and Rancid and the Suicide Machines and these bands like that. And we would do a tour every summer. And so I got a lot of just stage performance practice and tour practice that I kind of was able to do with comedy after that. By the time I was like 18, which was kind of good. and looking at contracts and dealing with bookers and that kind of stuff.
So when did you decide to start doing stand-up?
I always wanted to do it. Like I think if I had done stand-up instead of being in a band, I would have happily done that.
Okay.
But once the band broke up, I had no outlet because I don't have any musical talent. So I finally started doing stand-up.
Wasn't going to go solo with that.
No, it wasn't going to happen.
Amount of talent.
Yeah, exactly. So I started doing that, and I moved to England, and I lived there for a while. I started doing it over there, and then when I moved back, I just kept doing it.
How different did you find the crowds?
Very different.
Yeah.
They're very smart. So when they heckle you,
You're talking about America, of course.
No, yes. In England, they'll heckle you very pointedly. Like they'll have listened to everything you said, and
so they'll actually bring up.
Yeah, they won't just be like, "You suck." They'll be like, "Your point doesn't make any sense." Like they'll have like a very pointed, or they'll like tell you why something's not, and it's like very difficult to come back from. But weirdly, for all the pop culture stuff that's in my head, almost none of that is in any of my stand-up, and part of that I think is because I started in England, so I couldn't. I had to do a little bit more universal stuff. And it's only really recently since I've been doing the podcast and people come out to stand-up shows who listen to the podcast that I start to fold a little bit more of that stuff into the show a little bit.
As a young guy, did you like any of the British humor?
Yeah, I mean, the show that I always talk about as being sort of the life-changing show for me is The Young Ones, which was amazing. So The Young Ones was almost like the Monkees. It was in the 80s. It was all the sort of... England had this huge alternative comedy boom in the 80s based around this place called the Comic Strip, and it was called that because it was actually in a strip club. And they would let them do comedy shows before the strip club. And it was Rick Mayall and Ade Edmondson and just all these... and a lot of people, the women who went on to do Absolutely Fabulous, they all kind of were the scene in this one club. And Channel 4, when it started in England, hired them to do a show. And it's basically a sitcom about students in a house, but it's completely insane, and anything can happen. Bands show up, partly because they found out that a variety show has a larger budget, so they figured if they have a band play, they're a variety show now. But like you have people like Stephen Fry on it, you have, what's his name, Robbie Coltrane, like all these just amazing British 80s comedy actors are on this show, and MTV used to air it here late at night, actually back-to-back with the Monkees. And I remember being 5 years old and flipping through with my insomnia and seeing the band The Damned on.
Oh, wow.
And just being frozen and realizing that was what this, I'm like, this is what I love. I just didn't know it before. And I love that show, and that's such a huge influence on my life. Kind of why I moved to England, and I ended up having The Damned on my podcast, which was crazy. But yeah, I loved that stuff.
So what did you do when you were in England?
I finished school over there, and then I worked at the Cartoon Network for a while over there.
In what capacity?
I was the assistant to the presentation manager, so I just did the scheduling. So I decided what cartoons aired when, which was interesting for someone who was really into television. And all the jobs I had post-college, like the first 3 jobs were all television jobs. I worked at our CBS affiliate in Boston, and so I always had a TV on my desk or in my office because you had to. And when I got my first non-TV job, I was like, where's the TV? This is very strange. And I also realized how ridiculous some of the choices that people who do the programming are, because we showed a Ace Ventura cartoon and a Mask cartoon that were terrible, and I used to schedule them between noon and 1 because that's when I went on lunch, and I didn't want to watch them. Yeah. So some kid was like, "Oh, this is on at this time," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's on at that time because I literally don't want to have to watch them."
And you just recorded an album?
I did, yeah.
In California?
Yeah, I was out in LA at the Nerd Melt showroom And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was, and we like Laura Keitlinger and Greg Proops did guest spots on the show, which is crazy.
That's awesome.
We had a huge crowd. That room, I'd never had a bad show, and it's a theater in the back of a comic book store.
Oh, awesome.
On Sunset Boulevard, and it it went really well. So I'm putting that out in May, and I was very happy with it, which is unusual for me. Yeah, it was fun.
You seem like a generally easygoing guy, but you also probably seem like a bit of a taskmaster there.
A little bit, yeah. I definitely suffer from anxiety and depression, so I like to be controlled.
Welcome to the
I do
world of
comedy,
comedy.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I'm fairly easygoing for the most part with stuff. Well, I think it's mostly just because I don't care about most things. It's sort of just like, it doesn't matter.
Well, there's a book. What's the title? Amusing Ourselves to Death.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Let me see if there's anything I wanted to ask you that I don't have here, because I get the trivia questions coming up.
Oh yeah.
And I wanted to just make the point about. I saw you at Comic-Con and you were selling.
Yeah.
You were kind of clearing out the
Doing a basement clear up?
stables. You know.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, do you ever get that point where, remember, it was a Day of the Dead, where they're in the missile silo?
Yes, yeah.
And
The
there's
salt
all the
mines.
cabinets, and there's all the cabinets of all the information. And one
Yeah.
like, what was the point of all this shit?
Yeah, exactly. We have every record. Yeah. I love that movie. That's my favorite Romero movie.
Oh, is it really?
Absolutely, yeah. I went to those salt mines.
Oh, did
and
you
I
really?
also went to the Monroeville Mall from Dawn of the Dead.
And they tore that down recently.
Monroeville Mall's still there.
Oh, it is?
It's been refurbished, though. It's a little bit different. But it's the JCPenney's is mostly the same. The ice skating rink is now the food court. They have the bridge still. People were trying to save that. They were going to get rid of that. But it was, I've seen that movie probably 100 times. That's the first movie we ever rented.
Oh, no
And
kidding.
I actually have the videotape we rented when the video store was going out of business. I got that tape, so I have the actual first tape I ever rented. And so, yeah.
Did you watch it with your family?
We did when I was 2 years old. We watched Dawn of the Dead. Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Dawn of the Dead and Mother's Day. Those were movies we would watch frequently. Pieces. That
So
was
this is
another one.
explaining some more things.
Oh yeah. As a kid, I was like, my parents are really cool, but then I realized they were just like not parenting. I saw every movie. We went to the movies every single Wednesday. Didn't miss a Wednesday, and I saw all kinds of inappropriate things. But now, as an adult, I'm like, oh, they just didn't want to get a babysitter. That's what it was. But at the same time, I'm glad I saw a lot of that stuff.
I remember going to see, it was not Dario Argento. It was one of those Italian horror movies.
Fulci.
It was a Fulci one. I think it was Zombie.
Yeah.
And some woman is bringing, like a 5-year-old kid, and everybody just said, "Get that kid out!" I mean, literally, the crowd just went, "Get that kid out of here!" And they cheered. The woman went, "Okay," and walked out.
It takes a village. Literally, they're parenting that child. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm changing it up today. I used to have a couple of other questions I would ask, but I found out that I'm going to do trivia questions.
Okay, you found out you're going to do trivia questions?
I did, yes. So we're going to start out with this.
Okay.
One of these 4 authors is not a New Hampshire resident.
And these are all New Hampshire-based trivia questions?
They are.
Okay.
Jodi Picoult, John Irving, Grace Metalius, J.D. Salinger.
John Irving.
They're all from New Hampshire.
All of them are from New Hampshire. Trick question.
It is.
J.D. Salinger's son was an actor.
Oh, really?
He's in Revenge of the Nerds, and he played Captain America in the Golan Globus 1990 Captain America movie.
Yeah, he lived up in Cornish, New Hampshire for years.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess everybody in the town people would show up trying to find him. They just sent him the wrong way.
Yeah.
So that was the trick question for the first one. These next 2 are not tricks.
That's what someone making a trick question would say.
Which of these films is not located in New Hampshire?
Okay.
On Golden Pond, What About Bob, Blade Runner, Animal House.
Blade Runner.
Correct.
Yeah. Do you know the On Golden Pond, the opening of the show Newhart?
Yeah.
That's all outtakes from On Golden Pond.
Oh, no kidding.
That's all footage of New Hampshire, even though it's supposed to be Vermont.
Okay. And New Hampshire had a very famous general during the Revolutionary War.
Okay.
That general was General Eisenhower, General Schwarzkopf, General Washington, or General Stark.
Going with Stark.
You got it?
Yeah, Tony.
All right, so if you look under your chair.
Yes.
That's a piece of pie.
Oh, dear God. This is the prize that I got? It looks like
That's the
Reese's pie.
prize. It's a Reese's
Oh, this
peanut
is
butter
very,
pie.
yes, this is very exciting.
Yeah,
I'm a
that's-
big pie fan.
I did that much research.
Yes,
so.
yeah. That's, ooh. I'm glad I won. What would have happened if I didn't get it?
I think I smashed a pie in your face.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Some of it probably would have gone in my mouth. That's a sacrifice.
So your podcast?
Yes, TV guidance counselor.
Okay.
Yep,
And then
every
you can-
Wednesday's a new episode.
And your website is I Ken Reid.
I Ken Reid, yep, correct. KenReid.com was taken by a Southern conservative politician.
No, no kidding.
I sometimes get emails for him. I got quoted in a newspaper down there as him.
Oh, that's funny.
He was very angry.
You should hold an occasional press conference.
Yeah. I never said I was him. They just asked me for a quote about the, Virginia County Teachers Union, which I gave them. I don't
that's
know.
hysterical.
Yeah, and it was in the paper.
And your album is coming out when?
May 20th, it's going to come out. I'm doing a record release show down at the Middle East in Cambridge on the 27th. It's called The Vanity Project, Volume 1, Hollywoodland.
Great.
It's up for pre-order, I think, Wednesday, March 16th or 7th. No,
So it's coming out?
Yeah, coming up soon, yeah. So people can get it. Yep.
Awesome. So Ken Reid, it was great having you on the Bogus Hour.
Thanks so much.
Time flies.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
It's been great talking to you.
If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the Bogus Hour, email us here at thebogishour@gmail.com.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.